The moment I discovered my best friend's betrayal, my world imploded. But what I unearthed next was far more shocking. A hidden $10 million fortune tied to a secret life I never knew I was living. Get ready for a story that will make you question everyone you trust. I found the photographs on a Tuesday afternoon, tucked inside a manila envelope that had been shoved behind the water heater in our basement. I wasn't looking for them. I wasn't looking for anything, really. The plumber had just left after fixing a leak, and I was doing what any responsible homeowner does after a repair, checking to make sure nothing else looked amiss in that dark, cluttered corner of our lives. My fingers brushed against the edge of the envelope, and something about its placement, so deliberately hidden, made my stomach turn before I even knew what was inside. The first photograph showed my husband Marcus and my best friend Elena at what appeared to be a restaurant I didn't recognize. That alone wouldn't have been strange. They'd known each other for nearly as long as Marcus and I had been together, almost 15 years. But it was the way his hand rested on hers across the table, the intimate lean of their bodies toward each other, the soft focus of the image that suggested it had been taken from a distance, secretly, that made my hands start to shake. I pulled out the next photo, then another and another. There were dozens of them, spanning what looked like months, maybe years. Marcus and Elena at a park, walking down a street I'd never seen, entering a building together. Each image was dated in the corner with a small timestamp, and as I flipped through them, my brain struggled to match the dates with my own memories. March 14th. That was the day Marcus said he had a conference in Boston. May 22nd, my birthday. He'd claimed he was stuck in back-to-back meetings and came home late with wilted flowers and an apology. August 9th, the weekend Elena told me she was visiting her sick mother in Florida. The photographs scattered across the concrete floor as my legs gave out. I sat there among the evidence of their deception, my back against the cold basement wall, trying to breathe through the tightness in my chest. 15 years. I had loved Marcus for 15 years. Elena had been my maid of honor. Street sign. Rousseau Boulevard. I knew that street. It was in Monaco. Marcus and I had never been to Monaco. We'd never been to Europe together at all. Our finances, as I understood them, barely covered our modest mortgage and the student loans we'd been chipping away at for over a decade. My husband drove a 15-year-old Honda. We shopped at discount grocery stores. Our furniture came from estate sales and thrift shops. Marcus worked as a middle school math teacher, a job he claimed to love despite the terrible pay. And I made decent money in my firm, but nothing extraordinary. We lived, I thought, like most Americans in their early 40s. Comfortable enough, but always aware of the price of everything. Always calculating. Always careful. So how did my supposedly broke husband afford multiple trips to Monaco with my best friend? I gathered the photographs with trembling hands and climbed the stairs back to our kitchen. The house felt different now, like a stage set that I was seeing for the first time with the lights on, revealing all the cheap paint and false walls. I laid the photos out on our kitchen table, the same table where Marcus and I had eaten breakfast that very morning, where he'd kissed my forehead and told me he loved me before heading off to school. The same table where Elena and I had shared countless bottles of wine, where she'd held my hand through 2 miscarriages, and I'd held hers through her divorce. I needed to think. I needed to understand. But my mind kept circling back to the same impossible questions. How long had this been going on? Why had someone been following them and documenting their affair? And most pressingly, how was any of this possible, given our financial situation? That last question, at least, I had the skills to answer. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account, something I did routinely anyway as part of managing our household finances. Nothing looked unusual at first glance. The same modest balance, the same predictable deposits from our respective employers, the same mundane expenses for groceries, utilities, gas. But now I looked deeper, with the suspicious eye I usually reserved for my clients' books when something didn't add up. I started tracking Marcus's spending patterns over the past 2 years, creating financial identity I knew nothing about. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. In my line of work, I'd seen this before. Wealthy individuals hiding assets from spouses, business owners maintaining secret accounts. But Marcus was a public school teacher. Where would he even get the money for a secret account, let alone one that could fund international travel? I grabbed my phone and called Elena. It went straight to voicemail. Her cheerful voice chirped at me to leave a message, and I hung up without saying a word. I called again, and again. On the 5th attempt, she finally answered. "Hey, what's up? I'm actually in the middle of something." Her voice sounded strained, rushed. "Where are you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though I wanted to scream. "At work, why? Is everything okay? Which restaurant?" There was a pause, a long one. Elena worked as a manager at a high-end steakhouse downtown, but she'd been taking a lot of time off lately. Family emergency, she'd said. Her mother's health was declining. "I'm not at the restaurant today. I told you, my mom—" "Your mother is dead, Elena." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Elena's mother had died 6 years ago from pancreatic cancer. I'd been at the funeral. I'd helped Elena clean out her mother's apartment. This was perhaps the most insulting part of her lie, that she thought I wouldn't remember something so significant. "Claire, I can explain—" I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I wanted to throw something, to break something, to scream until my throat was raw. Instead, I forced myself to breathe, to think like the professional I was trained to be. Emotions wouldn't help me now. I needed information. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I confronted anyone. I looked at the photographs again, focusing on the details. The building they were entering in one image had a plaque beside the door. I zoomed in on my phone, enhancing the image as much as I could. The text was in French, but I could make out enough to search for it. It took me to the website of a private banking institution in Geneva. Not Monaco, Geneva, Switzerland. The kind of bank that didn't advertise it I could think of. I checked credit reports. I searched property records. And slowly, like watching a photograph develop in a darkroom, a picture began to emerge that was so far removed from the reality I thought I knew that I had to keep reminding myself this was my life, my husband, my supposed friend. Marcus had been filing separate tax returns. I found them buried in his email, which I'd never thought to check before because why would I? We were married. We were partners. We'd always filed jointly, or so I'd believed. But these separate returns, filed under his name alone, showed income I'd never seen. Consulting fees from various corporations, investment dividends, rental income from properties I didn't know existed. Last year alone, he'd reported income of over $2 million. $2 million! While I'd been carefully budgeting for our groceries and feeling guilty about buying myself a new pair of shoes, my husband had been earning $2 million from sources I knew nothing about. And if he'd earned that much last year, and the pattern held, then over the 15 years we'd been together. I did the math 3 times because I couldn't believe it. Even being conservative with my estimates, Marcus had hidden at least $10 million from me. Probably more. I sat in our kitchen, in our modest house with its second-hand furniture and the leak in the basement we'd just paid to fix, and I laughed. It was a horrible, broken sound, but I couldn't stop it. $10 million. My husband had $10 million. And he'd watched me stress over every penny, had agreed to forego vacations and nice dinners and 1,000 small pleasures because we needed to be responsible. We needed to save. We couldn't afford it. The betrayal of the affair suddenly seemed almost quaint in comparison. He'd been lying to me about everything. Our entire marriage had been built on a foundation of deception so profound and so carefully maintained that I had to acknowledge in some twisted way the sheer skill it must have taken. But why? That was what I couldn't understand. Why hide the money? Why live like we were struggling? Room spin. Marcus wasn't just hiding money. He was hiding an entire identity. He owned 3 corporations, 2 registered in Delaware and 1 in the Cayman Islands. He had property in Monaco, London, and Aspen. He had multiple bank accounts across Europe and Asia. And the Swiss account I'd asked about? It currently held over $8 million. Claire, David's voice was careful. Whatever you're dealing with, you need to be smart about this. People don't hide this kind of wealth without reason. Sometimes those reasons are just tax avoidance. But sometimes... He trailed off. Sometimes what? Sometimes there are other issues. Legal issues. I've seen cases where hidden wealth is connected to activities that the person doesn't want scrutinized. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but you need to protect yourself. Document everything. Don't let on that you know, and for God's sake, don't confront him alone. I thanked him and hung up, his warning echoing in my mind. What had Marcus been doing all these years? Where was the money really coming from? The tax returns showed consulting and investments, but that seemed too simple, too clean. People in his position as a teacher didn't just stumble into this kind of wealth. I opened a new browser window and started searching for the corporations David had identified. The first one, Meridian Consulting LLC, had a generic website offering business strategy services. The second, Harbor Point Investments, appeared to deal with real estate. The third, the one registered in the Cayman Islands, had no web presence at all. That was the one that worried me most. I was so absorbed in my research that I didn't hear the front door open. I didn't hear Marcus call my name. I only looked up when his shadow fell across the table, and I saw him standing there, his face going pale as he took in the photographs spread across the surface, my laptop open to his corporate filings, and my expression, which I can only imagine reflected the mixture of rage and shock and fear that was churning through me. Claire, he said, and his voice was so gentle, so careful, like he was trying to soothe a wild animal. Let me explain. Explain what, exactly? The affair? The 10 mil coffee? That man doesn't exist, does he? He never did. Marcus closed his eyes, and when he opened them, I saw something I'd never seen there before. Fear, yes, but also a kind of resignation, as if something he'd been dreading for years was finally coming to pass. The man you married does exist, he said quietly. He's standing right here. But you're right that you don't know the whole story. You don't know anything about where I came from or what I had to do to get here. Then tell me. I crossed my arms, trying to ignore the way my whole body was trembling. Tell me everything, starting with why my best friend was in Monaco with you and how you can afford to keep $8 million in a Swiss bank while I've been worried about our mortgage payment. Elena isn't your best friend, he said, and those words hit me like a physical blow. She never was. She's my handler. I stared at him. Your what? My handler. She works for the same people I work for, worked for, past tense. I've been trying to get out for the last 3 years. My mind was reeling. Handler? You're talking like you're some kind of spy. Marcus, you teach middle school math. No, Claire. I hide in plain sight as someone who teaches middle school math. There's a difference. He pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than his 43 years. I need you to listen to me, and I need you to try to understand that everything I'm about to tell you I kept from you to protect you. Not because I didn't trust you or didn't love you, but because knowing any of this puts you in danger. I think I'm already in danger, don't you? Someone's been photographing you, following us probably, so stop trying to protect me and just tell me the truth for once in our entire marriage. He nodded slowly. All right, the truth. I worked for a private intelligence organization, not government, though we often work with various governments. We handle situations that are too delicate or too illegal for official channels. Industrial espionage, asset recovery, information gathering. Sometimes more direct interventions when needed. You're a spy, I said flat. Was assigned to watch me. To watch us. To make sure I wasn't going to expose the organization or become a liability. When you two became friends, it was convenient for everyone. She could monitor me through you without arousing suspicion. Our entire friendship was fake? It wasn't a question. I could see the truth of it now, looking back on 15 years of shared confidences and late-night conversations and moments I'd thought were genuine. How much of what she'd told me had been real? Any of it? I'm sorry, Marcus said, and he sounded genuinely anguished. I know that doesn't help, but I am. When you and Elena became close, I tried to stop it. I tried to keep my distance from both of you, to keep my two worlds separate. But she was good at her job, and you were so happy to have a friend after we moved here. I didn't have the heart to interfere. How considerate of you, I said bitterly. And the affair? Was that part of your job too? There is no affair. He met my eyes steadily. Those photographs are staged. Think about it, Claire. You're a forensic accountant. You know how to spot something fake. Look at those pictures again. Really look at them. And tell me what you see. I didn't want to look at them again. I didn't want to give him the benefit of any doubt. But professionally, intellectually, I couldn't help myself. I picked up the photographs and studied them with fresh eyes, pushing aside my emotional response and analyzing them the way I would any piece of evidence. He was right. The images were wrong in subtle ways. The angles were too perfect, too deliberately composed. The lighting was too good for candid surveillance photos. And now that he mentioned it, while the poses suggested intimacy, there was no actual evidence of inappropriate behavior. No kissing, no hand-holding beyond that first image, which could easily have been a consoling gesture. They were designed to look damning at first glance, but wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. Why? I asked. Why stage these? Because someone wants you to find them. Someone wants you to question everything, to doubt me, to start digging into, because having me available for occasional consults was valuable to them. But something's changed. Something's happened that's made them decide I need to be more actively controlled. Or eliminated, I said. And saying it out loud made it real, made the fear that had been building in my chest crystallize into something sharp and cold. Or eliminated. He agreed quietly. Which is why you're in danger now, too. I'm sorry, Claire. I never wanted this for you. I thought I could keep you separate, keep you safe. But they've decided that the best way to control me is through you. I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly weak. So what do we do? We need to leave, tonight. I have a safe house, money they don't know about, new identities prepared. We can disappear, start over somewhere they can't find us. And just leave our entire lives behind? My job, my family, everything? Your life isn't real anyway, is it? He gestured around the kitchen. This whole thing, our marriage, our finances, it's all been built on lies. I'm offering you a chance at something genuine, even if it has to be somewhere else. As someone else. With the man who's been lying to me for 15 years. Yes, he said simply. I know I don't deserve your trust. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I love you, Claire. That was never a lie. Everything else, every deception, every secret, it was all to keep you safe and to keep this, what we have, as real as possible within the constraints of my situation. I wanted to believe him. God help me, even after everything, part of me still wanted to believe that the man I'd loved all these years existed somewhere inside this stranger sitting across from me. But I wasn't going to make any decisions based on emotion. Not now. Not when my life apparently depended on making the right choice. I need time to think, I said. We don't have time. They'll make their move soon, probably within the next 24 hours. That's why they left the photographs now. They want us off balance, frightened, making mistakes. Then I'll make my mistakes on my own terms. Never been before. Somewhere Marcus wouldn't think to look for me if he decided to come after me. I ordered a coffee I didn't want and sat in a corner booth, trying to organize my thoughts into some kind of coherent plan. The rational thing to do would be to go to the police. But what would I tell them? My husband is a spy and has been hiding millions of dollars and someone might want to kill us? They'd think I was insane. And Marcus had said the organization worked with various governments. What if the police were compromised? What if going to them put me in more danger? I could run on my own, use my own money and skills to disappear without Marcus. But if what he said was true, if I really was being watched, they'd find me. I had no training in this, no experience. I'd be caught within days, probably. Or I could do what Marcus suggested and trust him. Run with him to whatever safe house he'd prepared. Become someone new. And spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if today was the day they'd find us. None of the options were good. All of them terrified me. And underneath the fear was anger so profound it felt like it might consume me. How dare he put me in this position? How dare he marry me and build a life with me while keeping such massive secrets? How dare he make me fall in love with a person who didn't exist? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You need to come home. Now. It's not safe where you are. I stared at the message, my heart racing. Who was this? Marcus? Elena? The mysterious they Marcus had warned me about? I looked around the coffee shop, studying the other patrons with new, paranoid eyes. Was that man in the corner watching me? Was the woman by the window talking into her phone about me? Another text. Claire, please, this is Marcus. They're tracking your phone. You need to turn it off and come home. We need to leave right now. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the power button. If I turned off my phone, I was cutting myself off from any potential help, from any way of calling for assistance if something went wrong. But if they really were tracking it, if that was true, a restaurant manager's salary. Another detail I'd overlooked. I buzzed her unit, and after a long pause her voice came through the intercom, sounding strained. Claire? What are you doing here? Let me in, Elena. We need to talk. This isn't a good time. I don't care. Let me in or I swear I'll start screaming about everything I learned today loud enough for all your neighbors to hear. The door buzzed. I pushed it open and climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment. She was waiting in the doorway, and I was shocked by how different she looked. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. She looked frightened, and that scared me more than anything else had today. You shouldn't have come here, she said quietly. You've made everything worse. Good, I said, pushing past her into the apartment. Maybe things need to get worse before they can get better. Maybe I'm tired of being protected and manipulated and lied to. Maybe I want the truth for once. Elena closed the door and leaned against it. The truth is that you're in serious danger, and so am I, and so is Marcus. The truth is that by not listening to him and running when you had the chance, you've probably sealed all our fates. Then it's a good thing I'm here to share the experience with you. I sat down on her couch, uninvited. Tell me everything, Elena. Or whatever your real name is. It's really Elena, she said tiredly. That part was true. And the truth is that I didn't want this assignment. I didn't want to befriend you and lie to you for years. But that's not how this works. You don't get to choose. You follow orders or you become a liability yourself. Was any of it real? I hated how my voice cracked on the question. Our friendship, all the things we shared, was any of it real? She looked at me with such sadness that for a moment I saw a glimpse of the woman I'd thought I knew. More than it should have been. That was my mistake, Claire. I wasn't supposed to actually care about you. I was supposed to maintain professional distance, to use you as a resource to monitor if they needed him. So they made sure you couldn't have children. It was a small procedure, done while you were under anesthesia for your appendectomy 7 years ago. Do you remember that? How you went in for what they said was appendicitis? I did remember. I remembered the sudden attack of pain, the emergency room visit, the surgery. The recovery had been surprisingly easy, and I'd felt fine afterward. A little too fine, maybe, for someone who'd supposedly had a diseased organ removed. And then, 3 months later, when we'd started seriously trying for a baby, nothing had happened. Month after month of negative tests. Eventually, we'd seen specialists who told us it was unexplained infertility. Not uncommon. Nothing obviously wrong, just one of those things. They sterilized me. I said it out loud, letting the horror of it sink in. They sterilized me without my knowledge or consent, to control my husband. Yes, they knew Marcus wanted a family. They knew you wanted a family. By making sure you couldn't have one, they ensured that your life together would always have this void, this sadness. People who are completely happy are dangerous. They might get ideas about changing their circumstances. But people who are struggling, who have this constant low-level grief, they're easier to manage. They stay put. They don't rock the boat. I thought I'd cried all the tears I had in me today, but I was wrong. They came now, hot and furious, mourning not just for the children I'd never have, but for the violation of my body, my autonomy, my right to make my own choices about my own life. Every month I'd blamed my body for failing. Every negative test had felt like a personal inadequacy. And all along, it had been deliberately done to me, done to us, to keep Marcus controllable. Does he know? I managed to ask through my sobs. He suspected. He could never prove it, but yes, I think he knew. It's part of why he's been trying so desperately to get out. He wanted to tell you, wanted to find a way to fix it if possible, but he couldn't without exposing himself and putting you in even more danger than you're already in. And you? I looked slowly, backing toward the door. Are you going to do it? I don't know, she whispered. If I don't, they'll kill me too. They'll kill Marcus. They'll kill all of us. But if I do... She looked at me with such anguish. You're my friend, Claire. Despite everything, despite how it started, you're my friend. How can I... You can't, I said firmly. Which means we need a third option. And I think I know what it is. There is no third option. There's never a third option with them. Maybe not for a spy, or a handler, or whatever you people are, but I'm a forensic accountant. I track money. I find hidden assets. I build cases that destroy powerful people's financial empires. And if there's one thing I know, it's that every organization, no matter how secretive, runs on money. They have accounts, assets, ways of moving funds that leave trails. Tiny trails, maybe. Trails they think are hidden. But I can find them. Elena stared at me. You want to expose the organization. I want leverage. If we run, they'll chase us forever. Marcus is right about that. But if we have information, real information about their financial operations, about where their money comes from and where it goes, information that could destroy them if it got into the wrong hands, then suddenly we're too valuable to kill. We become insurance policies instead of liabilities. It's never been done. No one's ever successfully collected that kind of information on them. Because no one's ever been married to one of their operatives and best friends with one of their handlers. We have access they don't expect. We have knowledge they don't know we have. And we have skills they've underestimated because they see me as just some accountant who doesn't understand the game they're playing. I moved back toward Elena, speaking urgently now. But that's where they're wrong. I've spent my entire career understanding games like this. Just because it's wrapped in spycraft and danger instead of corporate malfeasance doesn't mean the fundamentals are different. Follow the money and you find the power. Get the power and you have leverage. Get leverage and you have freedom. They'll kill us for even trying. They're going to kill us anyway. At least this way we calmly on the couch. Claire, thank God. When you turned your phone off, I thought that they'd gotten to me. They tried. Or rather, they ordered Elena to handle it. But we're trying something different. I gestured for him to sit down. We're going to destroy them. I laid out my plan. It wasn't complicated in theory, though the execution would be difficult and dangerous. Marcus had access to some of the organization's financial systems through his consulting work. Elena had access to others through her role as a handler, including payment records for various operatives. And I had the skills to take that raw information and weave it into a comprehensive picture of their entire financial operation. Once we have that, I explained, we create a dead man's switch, multiple copies of the information stored in different secure locations, set to automatically release to law enforcement, media outlets, and rival intelligence agencies if we don't check in regularly. They can't kill us without destroying themselves. They have to let us go. Marcus shook his head. You're assuming they'll be rational about it. These are people who've built their power on being willing to do things others won't. They might decide to kill us anyway, even if it means taking themselves down too. Maybe, I conceded, but I don't think so. Organizations like this, they survive by staying in the shadows. The moment they're exposed, every government they've worked with will disavow them. Every client will disappear. Every operative becomes a liability instead of an asset. They'll lose billions of dollars and decades of carefully built infrastructure. That's not something they'll sacrifice just for revenge against 3 people. You don't know them like I do, Marcus insisted. You don't know how ruthless they can be. You're right, I don't. But I know spreadsheets and bank accounts and shell corporations. I know how to hurt people where they really feel it, in their wallets and their power structures. You know their operational tactics. Elena knows their personnel networks. Together, we know enough to actually pull this off. Elena had been quiet through this exchange, staring at her hands. Now she looked up. There's something you should know. The order to eliminate Claire, it didn't come from the top. It came from someone in the middle management level who's been exposure. We give them a way out that makes them look good. We frame this as neutralizing a rogue element who exceeded their authority. Marcus looked between us. You're talking about framing someone for our potential deaths? I'm talking about giving them a scapegoat, I corrected. Someone they can blame for this entire mess. Someone they can sacrifice to maintain the stability of their organization. And in exchange, we get to walk away with our lives and our freedom. For the first time since this nightmare had begun, I saw something like hope flicker across Marcus's face. That could actually work. If we can identify who gave the order and prove they were acting outside normal protocols, we make them the problem instead of us, Elena finished. We make it so the easiest solution for the organization is to cut them loose and leave us alone. We spent the next 3 hours planning. Marcus accessed his consulting portal and began downloading files, transaction records, client lists. Elena used her handler credentials to pull personnel files, operation budgets, payment authorizations. And I sat at Elena's dining table with my laptop, creating a framework to organize and analyze everything they were giving me. The picture that emerged was staggering. The organization wasn't just involved in intelligence work. They had their hands in everything, from arms dealing to drug trafficking to political manipulation in a dozen countries. The money flowing through their accounts totaled in the billions. They had penetrated governments, corporations, criminal syndicates. They were, in essence, a shadow power structure that operated above and outside normal legal frameworks. And now, we had proof of all of it. "This is bigger than I thought," I said quietly, scrolling through the data. "If this gets out, it won't just destroy them. It'll cause international incidents. Government officials will fall. CEOs will go to prison. This is enormous, which is why they'll never let it get out," Marcus said, "which is why they have to deal with us." I spent another hour creating the actual leverage package, not just the raw data, but a carefully constructed narrative that showed exactly who knew what and when, that traced decision-making authority, that identified the person Elena had mentioned, a mid-level operator named Thomas Vance, who had apparent unauthorized actions. "We have proof that he's been operating outside his authority, potentially compromising the organization's security. And we have all of this other information as our insurance policy. They take care of Vance, they leave us alone, and we keep our mouths shut about everything else we've found." "And if they don't agree?" Elena asked. "Then everything goes public. Every news outlet, every law enforcement agency, every government that's ever been compromised by them. We burn it all down." I looked at both of them. "But they'll agree. Because this way, they get to maintain their power. They get to keep operating. They just have to sacrifice one mid-level operator who overstepped his bounds. That's an easy trade for them." Marcus stood and paced across the room. "We need to set up the dead man switches first. Before we make contact with them, we need to make sure the information is secure and will automatically release if anything happens to us." "Already done," I said, turning my laptop to show him. "I've used systems I set up years ago for client protection, encrypted storage across multiple jurisdictions, automatic releases triggered by our failure to check in every 72 hours. They can't stop it without simultaneously accessing servers in 6 different countries, and they'd need to do it perfectly, simultaneously, or the other sites trigger. It's basically impossible." Elena laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "You really are good at this. I told them they were underestimating you." "They underestimated all of us," I said. "They thought Marcus would stay quiet out of fear. They thought you'd follow orders like you always have. And they thought I was just some suburban accountant who wouldn't figure out what was really going on. But they were wrong on all counts." Now came the hard part, making contact with the organization and presenting our terms. Marcus said there was a protocol for emergency communications with the leadership, a way to bypass the normal chain of command when something critical came up. He'd never used it before, but he'd been given access to it when he transitioned to consulting, in case he ever encountered a situation in the field that required immediate, top-level attention. "This qualifies," he said grimly, typing out a actually go to the meeting. "We send a representative, someone who doesn't know anything more than what we tell them, who can deliver our message but can't be used as leverage against us." "Who?" Marcus asked. "David, my colleague from work. He doesn't know what this is about, just that I need someone to deliver a message to a meeting I can't attend myself. He's done courier work before for sensitive documents, and he's well known enough in financial circles that making him disappear would cause the kind of attention they don't want." It took some convincing, but David agreed to do it. I told him it was related to a confidential case, that there were some dangerous people who didn't want certain information coming to light, and that I needed him to deliver a sealed package to a meeting on my behalf. He was curious, clearly, but he trusted me enough not to push for details I couldn't give him. The package contained a tablet loaded with just enough of our evidence to prove we had what we claimed. Summaries, sample documents, enough to show we weren't bluffing, and a simple message. Stop pursuing Marcus Keene, Elena Vasquez, and Claire Keene. Recall and discipline Thomas Vance for unauthorized operations. In exchange, we keep silent about everything we've discovered. Refusal means full disclosure to all relevant parties within 24 hours. That night, the three of us stayed together in Elena's apartment, taking turns keeping watch. None of us could sleep anyway. We were past the point of no return now. Either our plan would work, or we'd all be dead by this time tomorrow. Marcus and I hadn't really talked beyond the logistics of our plan. There was too much hurt between us, too many lies that still needed to be addressed. But in the early morning hours when Elena had dozed off in her chair and it was just the two of us awake, he came and sat beside me on the couch. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said quietly. "I know that even if we survive this, you probably can't stay married to me. But I need you to know that every moment we had together, every conversation, every morning and every night, all of it was real for me. I loved you before I married you, and I love you now. That was never part of the cover." I looked at there might be options, procedures that could reverse what was done, specialists who work with situations like this. If you still want children, if you still want that life, we could try to find a way. I wanted to stay angry. I wanted to hold on to my righteous rage. But I was also exhausted, terrified, and still, somewhere under all the hurt, still in love with this man who had lied to me, but who had also, in his twisted way, been trying to protect me. "If we survive this," I said finally, "then we'll talk. Really talk. Everything on the table. And then I'll decide whether there's anything left worth saving." He nodded, accepting that as more than he deserved. We sat in silence after that, waiting for morning, waiting to see if our gambit had worked or if we'd just signed our own death warrants. David called at 1:15 the next afternoon. "Claire? What the hell kind of meeting was that? Those people were intense. And whoever that Morrison guy is, he's got the coldest eyes I've ever seen." "Did he accept the package?" "He took it, spent about 20 minutes reviewing the contents while I sat there like I was waiting for a job interview. Then he asked me to convey a message to you. He said, and I quote, 'Terms accepted. Vance has been recalled for internal review. All surveillance and action orders regarding your client and associated individuals have been canceled. We appreciate their discretion in this matter and trust this resolves all outstanding issues.'" I felt my knees go weak with relief. He really said that? Those exact words? Word for word. "Claire, seriously, what is going on? Are you in some kind of trouble? Because those guys seemed like—" "I can't explain right now, David, but thank you. You may have just saved my life." I hung up and turned to Marcus and Elena, who had been listening tensely to my side of the conversation. "They accepted. We're free." Elena started crying, deep, shaking sobs of relief and relief. Marcus pulled me into his arms and I let him, because in that moment, I needed to be held by someone who understood what enforcement agencies that won't ask too many questions. We do it carefully, slowly, over time. But we do it. Elena wiped her eyes. She's right. We have this information. We have evidence of terrible things. How can we just sit on it and do nothing? Because doing nothing keeps us alive, Marcus argued. Because the moment we start attacking them, even indirectly, we become threats again. We're always going to be threats, I countered. The only thing protecting us is the dead man's switch, the knowledge that if they kill us, everything goes public. That doesn't change whether we leak some information now or not. And at least this way we do some good. We make their lives harder. We maybe prevent some of the harm they cause. We argued about it for hours. Marcus was terrified of poking the bear, of giving the organization any reason to reconsider their agreement to leave us alone. But Elena and I were united in feeling that we had a responsibility to use what we'd learned, that staying silent made us complicit in everything the organization did. In the end, we compromised. We would wait 6 months, let things settle, make sure the organization really was leaving us alone. And then, carefully and anonymously, we would start releasing select pieces of information. Not the full picture, not enough to completely expose the organization, but enough to cause problems for specific operations, to shut down particularly egregious activities, to maybe save some lives. It wasn't a perfect solution, but nothing about this situation was perfect. Over the next few weeks, we started the difficult process of rebuilding our lives. Marcus resigned from his teaching position, claiming family health issues. Elena quit her job at the restaurant. We sold the house and most of our belongings. And then, using Marcus's hidden money, the money that had started this whole nightmare, we moved to a small coastal town 3 states away. We didn't run to his safe house or take on new identities. That felt too much like we were still being controlled by fear. Instead, we made a deliberate choice to start over as ourselves, but in a place where we could define our lives on our own terms. Marcus and I are still practice specializing in finding hidden assets and exposing financial fraud. It's satisfying work, using the skills I developed during those frantic hours in Elena's apartment to help people who've been cheated and lied to. Sometimes I think about the information we have, the evidence of all those terrible things the organization has done. In 3 more months, we'll start releasing it. Small pieces, carefully distributed, impossible to trace back to us. It won't change the world, it won't bring down the whole system, but it might help. It might make a difference. And sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder if we made the right choice. If we should have just run when Marcus first suggested it. If we should have gone to the authorities regardless of the risk. If we should have released everything immediately and damned the consequences. But mostly, I think about the fact that I'm alive, that I discovered the truth, as horrible as it was, that I took control of my own life in a way I never had before. I think about the strength I found in myself that I didn't know was there, the ability to stare down people who kill for a living and make them blink first. My marriage was built on lies. My best friendship was a surveillance operation. My inability to have children was a deliberate act of violation designed to control my husband. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I have a choice now about what comes next, about who I want to be and how I want to live. That's more than I had before, when I thought I knew everything but actually knew nothing at all. Marcus comes and stands in the doorway of my office, watching me work. We do this sometimes, just exist in the same space without speaking, slowly learning how to be comfortable with each other again. "Do you think we'll ever be okay?" he asks quietly. "Really okay, not just surviving?" I look up from my computer at this man who destroyed my life and helped me rebuild it, who lied to me for 15 years but also risked everything to keep me alive. "I don't know," I say honestly, "but I think we might find out." He nods and walks away, and I turn back to my work. In 3 months, we'll start releasing the information. In 3 months, we'll begin the slow process of bringing some justice to the deniable, Vague enough to never point directly back to us, but specific enough to cause real problems. Operations were shut down. Assets were frozen. People we'd never met were arrested for crimes we'd helped expose. And through it all, the organization left us alone. Whether they knew what we were doing and chose to tolerate it as the cost of keeping their larger secrets safe, or whether our leaks were subtle enough to fly under their radar, we never knew. Either way, we were free. 2 years after that night in Elena's apartment, Marcus and I finally had the conversation we'd been avoiding. We sat on the deck of our small coastal house, watching the sunset over the ocean, and I told him that I thought we should divorce. Not because I hate you, I explained. Not even because I can't forgive you, though that's still hard some days. But because I don't think I can ever fully trust you again, and a marriage without trust isn't really a marriage at all. He was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. I understand. And you're right, I wish it could be different, but I understand. We can still be in each other's lives, I continued. We're bound together by everything that happened. But maybe we should stop pretending we can go back to being husband and wife when that relationship was built on a foundation that never really existed. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. It was amicable, as divorces go. We split the assets fairly, though given how much money Marcus had hidden, fairly meant I walked away with several $1,000,000. More money than I'd ever imagined having, bought with the price of my innocence and my ability to trust. Elena and I remain friends, real friends now, though our relationship will always be complicated by its origins. She left intelligence work entirely, started training to become a social worker, trying to balance the scales, she told me once, trying to help people instead of manipulating them. As for me, I threw myself into my work. My firm grew. I became known as someone who could find anything, track any money trail, expose any lie. I helped abuse victims find hidden assets. I worked with law enforcement to break up fraud rings. I used everything I'd learned from my own nightmare to help others escape theirs, and laid it automatically releasing. They're still out there, doing terrible things, manipulating and controlling and destroying lives. But they're a little weaker than they were, a little more constrained, a little more looking over their shoulders. And 3 people who they tried to control, 3 people who should have been easy to dispose of, are still out here, still free, still fighting back in small ways, still alive. That's not nothing. In fact, considering where we started, considering how close we came to losing everything, it's almost miraculous. We took on an organization that had toppled governments and won. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. My name is Claire Keene, and I'm a survivor. That's my story, and I'm still writing it, one choice at a time.